The small-town diner was supposed to be a place of warmth, where families gathered over coffee and pancakes. But that night, the sound of heavy boots and roaring laughter changed everything. A gang of bikers swaggered in, their leather jackets creaking, their eyes locking on a boy sitting quietly in the corner. He was young, maybe 15, eating alone, his dark skin a target for their sneers. What happened next would shake the entire town, because these men thought they could break him. Instead, they ignited a lesson so unforgettable, it would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The diner sat on the edge of a highway, the kind of place where truckers stopped for late-night meals and locals came for cheap coffee. Its neon sign flickered against the darkness, promising warmth inside. At a booth near the window sat Malik, a boy who had recently moved into town with his mother. She worked double shifts at the nearby hospital, leaving him to eat dinner alone some nights. Malik didn't mind. He loved this diner, the smell of syrup, the hiss of bacon on the griddle, and the way the waitress, an older woman named June, always slid him an extra piece of pie. But tonight was different. The bell over the door clanged as a group of bikers barged in. 6 of them, loud and reckless, their laughter heavy with arrogance. They weren't strangers, locals knew them well. Men who thrived on intimidation, riding their motorcycles through town like they owned the streets. People often looked away, hoping not to become their next target. Malik tried to keep his head down, focusing on the scrambled eggs in front of him. He wasn't used to drawing attention. At school, he already felt like an outsider, the only black kid in most of his classes. Teachers called him polite, hardworking. But among his peers, whispers followed him. He'd learned to keep quiet, to endure. The bikers filled the diner with their presence, spreading out across booths, slamming menus down, barking orders. Yet their eyes kept drifting toward Malik. Their smirks widened when they noticed he was alone. One muttered something under his breath, and the rest chuckled. June, the waitress, shot Malik a sympathetic glance. She had seen this before. Trouble was brewing. The air in the diner thickened, heavy with an unspoken warning. Malik's stomach twisted, but he didn't leave. He had faced enough silent stares to know running wouldn't fix anything. He tried to steady his hands, lifting his fork, pretending not to notice as the bikers' laughter grew sharper, more pointed. What they didn't know was that Malik carried more than quiet strength. Beneath the calm exterior was a boy shaped by resilience, raised by a mother who taught him dignity even in the face of cruelty. And tonight, that lesson would be tested in a way he never expected. It began subtly. The bikers mocked him with whispers loud enough to carry. One mimicked his posture, slouching in his chair and smirking. Another tapped a fork against a glass, humming a tune that twisted into a racial slur. Malik's chest tightened, but he focused on his plate. He had promised his mother he wouldn't let anger control him. Yet silence had a weight, and it pressed harder with each insult. June tried to distract the bikers, taking their orders quickly, refilling their coffee, keeping conversation short. But they weren't interested in food. They wanted a show. Finally, one of them, a broad man with a scar across his cheek, stood up. His boots thudded against the floor as he walked toward Malik's booth. The diner fell quiet. Even the cook in the back froze, the sound of sizzling fading into tense silence. The man leaned against Malik's table, his shadow falling over the boy's plate. "You lost, kid?" he asked, his tone dripping with contempt. He didn't need to say more, the message was clear. Malik didn't belong. Malik lifted his gaze slowly, meeting the biker's eyes. His voice was calm, steady. "Just eating." The biker laughed, a cruel sound that made his friends cheer from across the room. He reached for Malik's glass of milk and tipped it over, letting the white liquid spill across the table. "Not anymore, you're not." Gasps echoed from the corner booths. Some patrons looked away. Others shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Fear held them captive. Malik's hands clenched under the table. His instincts screamed at him to fight back, but his mother's voice echoed in his mind, "Strength isn't in your fists. It's in proving them wrong." So he stood, not with anger, but with composure. He grabbed a stack of napkins and began calmly cleaning the mess. The biker sneered, frustrated that his cruelty hadn't broken the boy. But Malik wasn't just enduring. He was planning. Earlier that week, he had been working on a school project about civil rights heroes, studying how people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks resisted hatred with unshakable dignity. He had soaked in those stories, the idea that resilience could disarm even the most hateful hearts. Tonight, he would embody that lesson. The bikers, however, weren't finished. They hurled more insults, their laughter filling the diner like smoke. Malik's quiet defiance only seemed to provoke them further. One tossed a piece of bread at him. Another stomped over, trying to block his way as he walked toward the counter to pay for his meal. But Malik didn't flinch. He reached the counter, handed June a crumpled bill, and said softly, "Thank you." His voice carried just enough to be heard, laced with dignity that contrasted the biker's vulgarity. The room shifted. Patrons who had stayed silent began to stir. Whispers traveled through the diner. People were watching, not just the cruelty, but Malik's refusal to bend. The bikers wanted to humiliate him, but instead, they were becoming the fools. And then, something unexpected happened. One of the younger bikers, barely in his 20s, faltered. His laughter died as he watched Malik walk away with quiet strength. For a split second, guilt flickered across his face. The scarred leader noticed and barked at him, forcing him back into cruel laughter. But the seed had been planted. Malik's composure was unraveling their unity. The storm was building. The bikers thought they held all the power. But Malik was teaching them a different kind of strength, one that would soon turn the night against them. The bikers decided to escalate. As Malik pushed open the diner door to leave, the scarred leader grabbed his shoulder, spinning him back inside. The room gasped. "You don't just walk out," the man snarled. But what he didn't expect was what came next. June, the waitress, slammed her tray onto the counter. Her voice cracked like thunder. "Enough!" She turned toward the other diners. "Are you all just going to sit there while this boy gets harassed?" The silence shattered. One by one, patrons stood. A truck driver, two older women, a pair of teenagers. Their eyes locked on the bikers, no longer afraid. Malik's quiet courage had given them the spark to act. The bikers, suddenly outnumbered, faltered. Their leader tightened his grip, but Malik straightened his back, looking him square in the eye. No fear. No weakness. Just strength. And then, as if fate delivered justice, red and blue lights flashed through the diner windows. Someone had called the police. The bikers cursed, scrambling toward the back, but it was too late. Officers stormed in, immediately recognizing the notorious group. The leader was shoved against the wall, handcuffed as his gang scattered helplessly. Malik stood still, calm amidst the chaos. For the first time that night, it wasn't him who looked small. It was them, the bullies, exposed, powerless. The diner slowly exhaled. Chairs scraped as patrons returned to their seats, murmurs filling the air. June hugged Malik tightly, her voice trembling with pride. "You didn't let them win," she whispered. The officers escorted the bikers out, their engines silenced under flashing lights. For years, they had ruled the town with fear, but tonight, a boy's quiet dignity had cracked their power. Word spread quickly. By morning, the diner's story reached every corner of town. People spoke not just about the bikers' arrest, but about the boy who stood tall without raising a fist. Malik's name became synonymous with strength, the kind that doesn't need violence to be heard. The young biker who had faltered returned days later, not with threats, but with an apology. He confessed that seeing Malik's composure made him question everything. Sometimes, change begins with a single seed, and Malik had planted one. For Malik, the night became a defining memory. He had faced hate, not with anger, but with resilience. He had shown that even in the darkest corners, dignity shines brighter than cruelty. And for everyone watching, the message was clear: racism thrives on silence, but courage, no matter how quiet, can dismantle it piece by piece. So, the next time you witness injustice, ask yourself this: will you look away, Or will you find the strength to stand tall like Malik? Because in the end, real power doesn't belong to those who spread fear. It belongs to those who refuse to bow to it.